Hi there, it's Polly here with Mr. Snoots. So one thing I've been enjoying is seeing in miniatures retro miniatures games, things that try and re-evoke some of the earlier eras of wargaming without getting bogged down in earlier eras of wargaming's sometimes questionable love for charts, subcharts, and charts within the charts. Some very early war games were quite simple, and there are some people bringing back the simplicity. Brave Battalions of Sprueburg. This is just a little game you can get. It costs basically nothing. I think it was like $1 or something on drive-through. This is like a nested campaign built into a simple game system. Now, the kind of setting that they've chosen is sort of kind of horse and muskety. That could mean virtually anything. If you had old American Civil War troops or 7 Years' War troops or Napoleonics or whatever, it's going to be something that's kind of infantry with kind of muskety things, cavalry, artillery, and skirmishes. This is what it breaks into. It keeps this very, very simple, and their idea is to just make this wonderfully simple, fun game that you can just play and maybe bring some figures out of retirement that you haven't played in ages. Bring out those old plastic Napoleonics that you had when you were a kid. What a fantastic idea. How the game works. It is played on a grid. It is played on a 10 by 8 grid. There are essentially, 3 different troop types. You have cavalry, you have infantry, you have artillery. But each of these has essentially a determination, which is its skill and its morale and all these sorts of things, and they vary. These vary pretty widely to give you a pretty wide array of troops, and they have a beginning army list that each of you are going to be working from. Oh, sorry, they've got skirmishes. Yeah, that's the other one. But you can choose some options from this to kind of tailor-make your force. So you have some extra kind of determination points that you can pour into the basic army. You can raise the determination of a couple of units. Now, the interesting thing is that they've decided to make cavalry relatively fragile. It's relatively low determination. So, of course, one thing you might want to do is, I want to butch up some of my cavalry with some of these customization points, or you might decide, I want my mighty guard imperial, I want my grenadiers, whatever. But the idea is that this is a mini campaign that you are going to play, and it has its own fiction that goes with it. They've just essentially given you we call it Imagi-nations. They've invented nations that never existed, and they have created this lovely war that we are going to fight out. There's a series of games, and as you play each game, you keep track of who won and who lost, and how well and how poorly. You will play the next game, and how that plays will be different depending on how the previous game went. You will get some bonuses here, you'll get extra troops there, you'll get a different setup. So, each game is influencing the last, and it sort of tells the tale of this attempt by this baroness or this duchess to sort of, seize someone's lands and increase her duchy. All right. So, simple, good stuff. The movement, you're just moving. It's a square grid, as I said. You're moving only from straight edge to straight edge. You may not move diagonally. Cavalry obviously move further than infantry. Artillery may not move into contact with someone. When it is time to fire, you measure distances, but you measure them the way you would move them. You don't measure the diagonal distances. So artillery can obviously fire at range. Cavalry obviously does not fire. I think the infantry does not fire really either. It's the artillery you have to watch for, because the infantry combat, it's going to be quite close. when you are firing at someone, it's pretty simple. It's done on a d6, and you are rolling at someone, and you add in a bonus for your determination, and your opponent, they roll the dice and they add their determination. There are some modifiers. Obviously, if you're firing at people and they are in cover, so skirmishers can fire, and if you're in towns, if you're in cover, if you're in woods, these sorts of things, obviously it's much easier for defenders' rolls, but damage whittles down your target's determination. This is why cavalry are kind of like, can be fragile, because cavalry get a big bonus when they get to melee. So melee is done the same way. You move opposite someone, and then you attempt to move into their square. When you do, there is a melee, and again, melee, d6, you're rolling your determination, but in this case there are a lot more bonuses. Cavalry attacking skirmishers in the open get a huge bonus. Cavalry get a big bonus if they've attacked from the flanks, these sorts of things. Skirmishers get a bonus actually if they are attempting to defend towns from attacking infantry, because these guys are assumed to be way better at taking cover, and so forth. It's a very simple game system. It's designed to be something, you go, your cheat sheets for it, it's just a single page just with your bonus for each thing. It's a very simple system, but it's a very cute idea. Their idea was, you can have these things from any sort of figure collection that you like that's just lying around. You can, whatever you've chosen as your grids. Now ideally your grids actually should probably be about the size of a playing card, because how the movement initiative goes is, everyone gets a, each unit has an ID, and as you turn a card, that's where the unit gets to, that's the unit gets to move. But at the start of each turn, each of you can nominate 2 of your units that are chosen and selected. So what you've done is you've taken some cards, I think you've got 10 units each. So there's a deck of cards that are 10 red, which is a side A, 10 black, which is side B, and the jokers are kept in. But you can each remove 2 cards from your setup, and those are the ones that are definitely going to move, and you keep them on the base. You then draw cards. When a card ID comes up, that unit can move and do its movement, do its fire, do all that sort of thing. If a second joker comes out during a turn, then the turn is over. So sometimes the turn can be over before everyone gets a chance to do their movement. Once that section is done, now you can both move the units that you have selected as going to move. But they will do it after everyone else has swarmed around and randomly done their stuff. So there's a bit of gamesmanship there in, who do I want to definitely move, but I want them to sort of kind of take advantage, I guess, of the battlefield after the movement and the deployments and so on have been done. So yeah, there is definitely some thought about how you're wanting to use those activation cards, and that's a thing that turns an incredibly simple D6, beat the other guy's roll game into something that's got some definite thought. Not bogging the game down, but it's like, that's kind of where some of the cunning of the game comes from. This is a very sweet little idea. Someone's just cooked up a cool, simple Imagi-nations game framework for a kind of horse and muskety imaginary thing, pick Grand Duchy of Ralstark versus, whomever, and just made this game that you can just sit down and play with a friend and do a series of these over the course of a couple of hours in the afternoon. These aren't going to be long games individually, but the little campaign thing is obviously going to take a little while. The resources, obviously, it's a miniatures game. You can have whatever you want, but the thing is designed to be something very simply played. So whatever you can do to divide a board up into an 8x10 grid, and obviously terrain are individual pieces that fit within the grid, and the scenarios have different amounts, but you're going to need some woods, some towns, a road. Units are allowed to move quite rapidly along a road, by the way, so units that are held back, or in some scenarios coming in from off the board, they can actually have a pretty considerable influence on the game, because they can vroom into sort of areas where they're needed. But, you know, so look, this is kind of, I've seen, like, I've reviewed a Travel Napoleonics game. This is closer to that, because in the end, what you could do is literally play this with a chessboard and some little counters that you've made to indicate what each square might be if you've got terrain in it. No, you could just have some counters or squares of card or slips of paper that you put woods, town. And hell, you could play it with, you know, you could play it with chess pieces, you could play it with, you know, elements drawn from other games, you could play it with counters. It is actually simple enough to be a travel game, and therefore is one of the few ones that actually does it, because the travel games I keep seeing are huge. So anyway, Brave Battalions of Sprueburg. It's a very sweet title for a very sweet idea. If you're a miniatures gamery sort, thoroughly recommend you take a look at it for good old time's sake, but also it is kind of a very cute idea, particularly if you're just, you're there with a friend, it's a rainy day, you felt like something fun and sweet and simple that was going to, like, you know, just be damn good fun. I really like the idea of that. A game that uses old miniatures you might have had around for years, trot them out, have some fun again, in a game that is designed to provide you with a series of games in a campaign where the results of the previous games affect the tree diagram of results down below. So as you get different results, the other games change and mutate, so the campaign will never play the same twice. Very good idea. Alright everybody, I will see you around the games table somewhere, I hope. Until then, look after yourselves, take great care of your personal safety, particularly if you're part of the LGBTQ community over there in your hellholes like the USA or UK. Or indeed if you're not my colour and you live in the USA. Much love to everyone. Okay, bye.